The email from HR was a masterpiece of corporate nonspeak, something about realigning strategic assets and optimizing human capital. It was a 5-paragraph, soul-crushing poem dedicated to the art of telling me I was being publicly demoted. D. My boss, Ethan, a man whose entire personality was a curated LinkedIn profile, had just announced my new role on a company-wide Zoom call. Process optimization facilitator for legacy systems. It was the corporate equivalent of being sent to a dusty archive in the basement to die. He smiled his brilliant white, professionally whitened smile, convinced he just innovated me into irrelevance. He thought my systems were legacy. He thought I was legacy. He was about to learn that legacy systems have the deepest roots, and that the architect who built the foundation also built in a few features, ones that only trigger when someone gets careless. Hilariously, catastrophically careless. His biggest mistake wasn't sidelining me. It was forgetting that I was the one who wrote the rules of the game he thought he was winning. Ready for the story of how a single, overlooked compliance clause and a meticulously designed AI brought down an empire of buzzwords? Then settle in, because this is going to be delicious. Part 1, the synergy meeting from hell. The digital guillotine fell at 10:03 a.m. on a Tuesday. It wasn't a messy, dramatic affair. In the world of modern corporate executions, it was a clean, bloodless, and utterly humiliating affair broadcast to 200 employees across 9 time zones. I was watching it happen on my second monitor, my face a perfect neutral mask honed by a decade of enduring meetings that could have been emails. Ethan Anderson, our Chief Digital Transformation Officer, filled the screen. His background was a meticulously blurred testament to minimalist wealth, a hint of a ficus, a sliver of an abstract painting that probably cost more than my car. He was speaking in his usual dialect, a frictionless blend of TED Talk inspirationalism and the entire glossary of a Gartner report. Team, as we pivot towards a more agile, future-forward paradigm, he began, his hands making gentle, curving motions as if he were shaping a pot out of pure innovation. We must embrace disruption not as a threat, but as an opportunity to energize our core competencies. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my black coffee. It was a game I played, one sip for every unforgivable piece of jargon. My caffeine intake had tripled since Ethan's arrival 2 years ago. And that, he continued, his smile widening, means empowering new voices, fresh perspectives. That's why I'm thrilled to announce a new leadership structure for our digital trust framework. My framework. The one I'd spent 3 years designing, building, and implementing. The complex, interconnected web of compliance protocols, automated accountability checks, and data integrity systems that kept our entire global operation from collapsing into a black hole of regulatory fines and chaos. It was my life's work, a beautiful, logical cathedral of code and policy. To Ethan, it was a framework, something to put on a slide. I'm promoting Lucas Harris to Director of Digital Strategy and Innovation, Ethan declared. A new face popped up in the main Zoom window. Lucas Harris. He had the earnest, unlined face of a 24-year-old who believed his 6 months of experience at a crypto startup that imploded had given him the wisdom of a seasoned oracle. His title was Digital Native Growth Hacker, a phrase so meaningless it was almost a Zen koan. He was now, apparently, my boss. Lucas is going to help us sunset our legacy dependencies and gamify our engagement pathways, Ethan beamed. He's a true disruptor. I watched Lucas give a little wave, a flicker of pure, unadulterated entitlement in his eyes. He probably thought legacy dependencies were a classic rock band. Then came the final, elegant twist of the knife. And to ensure a smooth transition, Ethan said, his gaze flickering toward the participant list where my name sat, silent and alphabetical. I'm excited to have Olivia Clark move into a new, crucial role. She'll be our process optimization facilitator, focusing on our legacy systems. He paused, letting the title hang in the air like a bad smell. We're so grateful for her foundational work, and this will allow her to focus on what she does best, while Lucas's team ideates on our blue sky strategy. Process Optimization Facilitator. It was a title that sounded like it was generated by a corporate-speak algorithm fed a diet of despair. It meant nothing. I was being sidelined, publicly. My cathedral was being handed over to a child who thought architecture was choosing a new font for the company newsletter, and I was being relegated to the role of janitor. My Slack notifications began to chime softly, a chorus of digital pity, little green dots appearing next to the names of my colleagues. Noah Hernandez, my former deputy, a man who understood the intricate beauty of my systems better than anyone, sent a single, eloquent message. A period. Just. It was our code for "I have no words for this level of idiocy." I typed back a single word, acknowledged, because I wasn't angry. Anger is a hot, messy emotion. What I felt was a cold, clear, and profoundly amusing sense of inevitability. Ethan and Lucas didn't know what they were inheriting. They saw a house and wanted to repaint the walls. They had no idea that I was the architect, and I had designed the building to a very, very specific set of codes. Building codes they had no intention of reading. You see, 3 years ago, when I built the digital trust and compliance framework, I built it to be resilient. I built it to be smarter than the people who would one day try to break it. I built it to protect the company from arrogance and incompetence. I built in failsafes, automated, self-reporting, iron-laced failsafes. One of them was a little thing I called the 360 degrees vision and velocity performance review system, or VVPRS. Ethan loved the name. He'd taken credit for launching it at the last all-hands meeting. It was an AI-driven system that tracked project metrics, but it did more than that. It was designed to detect patterns, inconsistent reporting, sudden, large-scale data deletions without proper archival logs. And my favorite feature, performance anomalies, where stated project outcomes diverged wildly from actual system data. It was an automated lie detector, and it secretly cross-referenced everything against system access logs, vendor contracts, and, most importantly, handover documentation. The other was even more mundane, even more beautiful in its bureaucratic simplicity. A single clause buried deep within Corporate Governance Policy 401.7, a document so dense it could be used as a sedative. I called it the Synergy and Scalability Audit Trigger, or SSAT, Clause 7BI. It stipulated that if a project lead was reassigned or removed, the initiating executive, in this case, Ethan, became personally, legally, and financially liable for all systemic failures, regulatory breaches, or financial penalties incurred. If a mandatory 30-day knowledge transfer and validation phase was not formally completed, documented, and digitally signed off within the VVPRS, Ethan had signed off on policy 401.7 without reading it, of course. He'd called it excellent housekeeping and moved on to designing a new logo for our internal Slack channel, Thought Leadership Thrusters. The Zoom call ended. My calendar was already populated with new, pointless meetings from Lucas. My access to the core architectural dashboards was now read-only. I closed my laptop. The silence in my minimalist apartment was absolute. I stood up, walked to my kitchen, and put on the kettle for a cup of Earl Grey tea. They thought they had put me in the basement. They didn't realize I was simply moving to the observation deck. The show was about to begin, and I had the best seat in the house. Part 2, a symphony in B-flat minor for deleted files. My new office was a corner table at a cafe called The Daily Grind, a name I found fitting. It had excellent Wi-Fi, even better coffee, and a comfortable distance from the impending implosion. My official duties as process optimization facilitator involved, according to Lucas's first email, auditing legacy documentation for synergistic opportunities. It was the corporate equivalent of being told to go count the ceiling tiles. I interpreted it as get paid my full salary to watch a comedy of errors unfold from a comfortable chair. The first signs of trouble came, as they always do, through the digital nervous system of the company. Slack. Noah, bless his perpetually tired soul, was my man on the inside. His messages were haikus of corporate despair. Noah Hernandez, 11:14 a.m. FYI, Lucas just renamed the critical vendor compliance channel to Vendor Vibes. He also added a Jiffy integration. I pictured our multi-million-dollar vendor contracts now being discussed with dancing cat gifs. I took a sip of my latte. A few days later, Noah Hernandez, 2:30 p.m. Question. Do you remember if the quarterly financial audit logs were stored in the Q3 Project Phoenix Legacy folder? Me, 2:31 p.m. Yes, they were. Noah Hernandez, 2:32 p.m. Interesting, that folder is no longer with us. Lucas said he was decluttering our digital footprint. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. I simply felt the quiet, satisfying click of a tumbler falling into place. The VVPRS, my silent sentinel, would have logged that deletion. It would have noted the user, Lucas Harris, and the lack of a corresponding archival request. It was a single data point, but the system was designed to see patterns. The chaos escalated with a performative flourish that was pure Ethan. He launched a new company-wide initiative, Operation Velocity. The kickoff email was a glorious train wreck of buzzwords, promising to unleash unprecedented agility by breaking down bureaucratic silos. In practice, this meant Lucas was given administrative privileges to streamline whatever he saw fit. Lucas, the digital native growth hacker, interpreted streamlining as indiscriminately revoking access permissions and deleting anything that sounded old. The company's shared Google Drive began to look like a forest after a wildfire. One afternoon, I was reviewing and I use this term loosely, project plan Lucas had shared for migrating our primary client database. It was a one-page Google Doc filled with inspirational quotes and a timeline that seemed to be based on wishful thinking rather than, say, the laws of physics. As I was scrolling through it, a Slack message from Mia White, a brightied intern assigned to Lucas, popped up in a shared channel. Mia White, 1:45 p.m. At Lucas Harris, hey, just following up on your request. I've deleted that whole Phase 2 vendor integration blueprint folder for Project Chimera. You were right, it was full of old stuff. Feels so much cleaner now. Smiling face with smiling eyes. I froze, my hand hovering over my mouse. Project Chimera. Our largest and most complex international vendor partnership. The blueprint folder didn't just contain blueprints. It contained the executed contracts, the payment schedules, the security compliance certificates, and the meticulously documented audit logs that proved we were in adherence with stringent international data privacy laws. It was the project I had been leading before my realignment. And it was the project Lucas had officially taken over from me, a handover for which he had, of course, skipped the mandatory knowledge transfer and validation phase. D said he needed to hit the ground running, not get bogged down in legacy handholding. This was it. This was the moment. The deletion of a critical project folder by an unauthorized user on a project with a recent leadership change and no validated VVPRS handover record. It was the trifecta. I looked down at my smartwatch. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to send an email. I didn't have to make a call. The system was autonomous. It was a digital antibody designed to identify and isolate a disease. I waited. 1 second, 2, 3, my watch vibrated softly against my wrist. A single, discrete notification appeared on its dark screen. System alert, Protocol Alpha executed. A ghost of a smile touched my lips. Protocol Alpha was the official name for the SSAT. It was the big one. An automated, non-repudiable, high-priority email had just been dispatched from the VVPRS servers. It wasn't addressed to some middle-level manager. It was addressed to three people: Sophia Wilson, the Chief Compliance Officer, William Gonzalez, the General Counsel, and most gloriously of all, Chairman Alexander Martinez, the stoic, no-nonsense head of the board who had a legendary oller. Jai to corporate jargon and incompetence. The subject line of that email, which I had written myself 3 years ago, was designed for maximum impact. Urgent. Critical System Integrity Breach and Executive Accountability Notification Project Chimera. The body of the email would contain the specific details. The timestamp of the deletion, the user who performed it, Mia White, on behalf of Lucas Harris, the critical nature of the deleted files, the lack of a validated handover from me to Lucas, and the beautiful, brutal finale, a direct quote of Clause 7bi. Of Policy 401.7, highlighting the personal liability of the initiating executive. It would even attach a copy of the policy, with Ethan Anderson's digital signature glowing on the final page. It was over. They just didn't know it yet. I took a long, slow sip of my no-cool coffee, the bitter taste a perfect counterpoint to the sweetness of the moment. Across the city, in a glass tower filled with ergonomic chairs and inspirational neon signs, a silent, digital bomb had just detonated. All I had to do now was wait for the sound to reach me. Part 3, the audit doesn't care about your vibe. The first tremor registered in the form of Sophia Wilson, our Chief Compliance Officer. Sophia was a woman who lived in a perpetual state of controlled panic, her entire professional life dedicated to preventing the very kind of disaster that had just landed in her inbox. I could imagine the scene perfectly. Sophia, probably midway through her third cup of herbal tea for the day, would see the subject line: urgent, critical, breach, accountability. Her blood pressure would spike. She would open the email and see the cold, hard, system-generated data. No room for interpretation. No synergy or paradigm shifts. Just facts, timestamps, and policy numbers. Her first call would be to William Gonzalez, the head of legal. William was a different beast, a pragmatist, a man who had seen every flavor of corporate foolishness and had grown weary of it all. He probably received Sophia's frantic call with a sigh, assuming it was another fire drill started by Ethan's move fast and break things philosophy. But then Sophia would have forwarded him the email. William would have read it, his eyebrows likely climbing higher with each line. He would have scoffed at the system-generated alert, then scrolled down to Clause 7bi. He would have recognized it. He'd even helped draft the boilerplate for Policy 401.7. He would have pulled up the final version from the legal archives and seen the signature. Ethan Anderson, a legally binding attestation. The quiet, satisfying, oh, crap moment I had envisioned for him would have been exquisite. The clause was ironclad. It was designed to be. It wasn't an HR policy. It was a governance directive, approved by the board, to ensure operational continuity and mitigate risk. And Ethan, in his haste to appear decisive, had walked right into it. The final recipient, Chairman Alexander Martinez, was the true audience for my little masterpiece. Martinez was old school. He'd built the company from a small hardware firm into a global tech giant. He despised buzzwords and valued two things above all else: results and accountability. He saw through Ethan's performative leadership, but had tolerated him as a necessary evil in an industry obsessed with image. Martinez would have received the email on his tablet, probably while reviewing quarterly earnings reports. He wouldn't have panicked. He would have read it once, then twice. He would have noted the automated, non-repudiable nature of the report. He would have seen the name of the initiating executive. And he would have felt the cold fury of a man who sees his legacy being threatened by a fool. His call would have gone directly to William Gonzalez. The conversation would have been short. Is this clause 7bi Valid and enforceable? A pause. Yes, sir. It is. And is Anderson's signature on the policy document legitimate? Authenticated and timestamped, sir. Thank you, William. Set up a meeting. My office. 30 minutes. You, Sophia, and Mr. Anderson. While this C-suit drama was unfolding, the ground-level chaos was reaching a comical crescendo. Noah was my chronicler. Noah Hernandez, 3:15 p.m. The payment portal for our EU vendors just went down. Lucas is telling everyone to leverage this downtime for some blue-sky ideation. I think our German supplier is about to have a very different kind of ideation. Noah Hernandez, 3:47 p.m. Ethan's assistant just came and physically unplugged Lucas's computer. Didn't say a word, just pulled the plug and walked away. Lucas is just sitting there staring at the blank screen. It's the most productive he's been all month. The meeting in Martinez's office, as I later pieced it together from a very relieved Sophia, was a masterclass in corporate vivisection. Ethan, summoned from a synergy session about the new office kombucha flavor, walked in with his trademark confident smile, probably assuming he was about to be praised for his decisive leadership. He found Martinez sitting behind his large mahogany desk, looking not angry, but disappointed, a far more terrifying emotion. Sophia and William were seated to the side, looking like they were attending a funeral. Ethan, Martinez began, his voice calm and gravelly. I have here a system-generated report concerning Project Chimera. Ethan's smile flickered. Ah, yes, we're making tremendous strides there. Lucas is really disrupting the legacy workflows and unlocking some incredible. The report states that the entire vendor integration blueprint folder, containing legally binding contracts and compliance documentation, was permanently deleted. Ted, an hour ago, Martinez said, cutting him off. Ethan blinked. A cleanup, a bit of digital housekeeping to improve velocity. Lucas is. The system also states, Martinez continued, ignoring him, that you, as the initiating executive for the leadership change on that project, failed to complete the mandatory knowledge transfer and validation phase, as stipulate. D in Corporate Governance Policy 401.7. He slid a tablet across the desk. On the screen was the email. Ethan picked it up. He saw the cold, hard data. He saw Clause 7bi. He saw his own name. The blood drained from his face. The carefully constructed facade of the LinkedIn thought leader crumbled, revealing the panicked, clueless manager beneath. This is a misunderstanding, he stammered. A system glitch. This VVPRS, it's just an algorithm. It's the system you took credit for launching at last quarter's town hall, Martinez said flatly. The one you called our North Star for accountability. And according to our general counsel, this clause you signed makes you personally accountable for the millions of dollars in regulatory fines and contractual penalties we are now fasten. Your North Star, Ethan, appears to be pointing directly at you. The silence in the room, Sophia told me, was absolute. Ethan opened his mouth, but for the first time in his life, no buzzwords came out. He had been so obsessed with the new, shiny, agile way of doing things that he had been outsmarted by the one thing he never bothered to understand. The boring, meticulous, unglamorous rules. My rules. Part 4, a cascade of reply-alls and other digital disasters. The public execution was scheduled for the following day. Ethan, in a final, glorious act of hubris, was the keynote speaker for an industry webinar titled Future-Proofing Our Enterprise Architecture. It was a title I found so ironic, I nearly laughed out loud in the cafe. I had the webinar open on my laptop, audio muted. I wasn't interested in his empty pronouncements. I was waiting for the denouement. He appeared on screen, back in his element. The blurred background was back, the confident smile plastered on. He started talking, his hands weaving their intricate dance of nothingness. The digital enterprise of tomorrow, he said, is not built on rigid structures, but on a fluid ecosystem of constant, iterative innovation. My phone buzzed. It was Noah. Noah Hernandez, 10:22 a.m. Security is at Ethan's office door. I looked back at the webinar screen. Ethan was mid-sentence, talking about leveraging synergistic paradigms when his eyes flickered off camera. A brief look of confusion crossed his face. He faltered. "One moment," he said to the unseen audience of industry professionals. He leaned out of the frame. The webinar feed showed an empty chair for a few seconds. Then, abruptly, the host's logo appeared on the screen with the words, "We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by." Noah Hernandez, 10:23 a.m. They're walking him out. He's not carrying his laptop. The beauty of it was the sheer, brutal efficiency. No dramatic scene, no shouting, just the quiet, irreversible process of a system correcting an error. Ethan Anderson, Chief Digital Transformation Officer, had been digitally and physically transformed into an exemplary in the middle of a speech about the future. Lucas's exit was even more pathetic. He was, according to the torrent of Slack DMs now flying between my former colleagues, standing at the artisanal coffee bar, loudly explaining to a barista how their payment system could be gamified for a better user journey. He went to Pa. Why with his corporate badge, and the machine beeped red. Access denied. He tried again. Red. A security guard tapped him on the shoulder and quietly asked for the badge. His laptop and phone were remotely wiped before he even made it to the elevator. His last public Slack message, posted just before his access was revoked, was preserved for posterity in a dozen screenshots. Just an FYI team, if you're getting error messages, it's probably just some legacy code flaring up. I'm on it. Disrupt. The aftermath inside the company was a controlled implosion. An email went out from Chairman Martinez's office. It was concise and jargon-free. It announced the immediate departure of Ethan Anderson and Lucas Harris. It mentioned a critical failure in operational procedure and announced a temporary freeze on all system migrations. It ended by stating that a full audit and recovery process was underway. The chaos turned to a stunned, buzzing silence. The fools who had been driving the car off the cliff were gone, but the car was still heading for the cliff's edge. That evening, my phone rang. The caller ID was a name I hadn't expected to see. Alexander Martinez. I let it ring 3 times before answering, my voice calm and even. "Olivia Clark." "Olivia," he said, his voice tired but clear. "I believe we need to talk. I've just spent the last 6 hours with legal and compliance reviewing a system you designed. It appears to be the only thing in this company that is working perfectly." "It was designed to," I replied. There was a pause on the line. I could hear him breathing. "Ethan Anderson called your work legacy. It seems to me your work is the future. The one he was trying to future-proof us from. I made a mistake, Ms. Clark. I allowed style to trump substance. I'm hoping to convince you to help me correct that." "I'm listening," I said, leaning back in my chair, the lights of the city twinkling outside my window. "I'm dissolving the Chief Digital Transformation Officer role." "It's meaningless," he said with undisguised contempt. "I'm creating a new position. It reports directly to me. Full autonomy. Full authority over the company's entire digital infrastructure, from architecture to compliance to security. I want you to build it, run it, and protect it from anyone who thinks a good hashtag is a substitute for a strategy." He took a breath. "The role is Chief Systems Integrity and Accountability Officer. Is that something that would interest you?" I looked around my quiet apartment. The laptop with the webinar feed was still open, the technical difficulties screen a monument to a spectacular failure. My teacup was empty. The show was over. The cleanup was about to begin. A small, genuine smile finally broke through my cool composure. It was time to go back to work. Part 5, The Architect's Signature. My first day as Chief Systems Integrity and Accountability Officer was nothing like my last day as a process optimization facilitator. There was no grand announcement, no company-wide email filled with platitudes. There was only a quiet calendar invitation from Chairman Martinez to the executive leadership team. The subject was simple: introduction. I walked into the boardroom, the same one where Ethan had pitched his nonsensical Operation Velocity just weeks before. Martinez was at the head of the table. The other VPs, men and women I had long worked with from the trenches, looked up as I entered. There was a mixture of surprise, relief, and a healthy dose of respect in their eyes. They had all witnessed the implosion. They knew who had held the detonator. I wasn't wearing a power suit. I wore a simple, well-tailored black dress. My laptop was my only accessory. I took the seat next to Martinez. "This is Olivia Clark," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "She is our new Chief Systems Integrity and Accountability Officer. Her authority in all matters relating to our digital infrastructure is absolute. She reports to me. You will give her your full cooperation." And that was it. The meeting moved on to other topics. There was no need for a lengthy explanation. The results had spoken for themselves. Competence, it turned out, was its own best resume. My first order of business was not revenge. It was restoration. I promoted Noah Hernandez to be my Director of Systems Architecture. The look of exhausted gratitude on his face was more satisfying than any victory lap. Together, we began the meticulous process of rebuilding. We restored the deleted files from the deep archival backups I had designed, backups Lucas didn't even know existed. We reinstated the proper compliance protocols. We systematically dismantled every vapid, buzzword-driven initiative Ethan had launched. The Thought Leadership Thrusters Slack channel was quietly archived. Vendor Vibes was renamed to the starkly functional Vendor Contract Compliance. I didn't gloat. I didn't have to. The system itself was my closing statement. The story of Ethan and Lucas became a quiet legend within the company. A cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones about the dangers of ignoring the quiet ones in the room. Their LinkedIn profiles were updated to seeking new opportunities with a comical speed. Ethan's webinar was scrubbed from the internet, but not before someone had downloaded it, and the clip of his face just before he was pulled off camera became an internal meme. A few weeks later, I was working late, finalizing the new architectural charter. My office, the one that had belonged to Ethan, was now Spartan and clean. The abstract art was gone, replaced by a large whiteboard covered in complex, logical system diagrams. My phone buzzed. It was a news alert. A tech industry blog had posted an article. The headline read, "Corporate Chaos: How a Single Compliance Clause Led to a Multi-Million-Dollar Fumble and Executive Ouster at Tech Giant." The article detailed the fallout, the near loss of the Chimera contract, and the subsequent stabilization of the company. It quoted anonymous sources who spoke of performative innovation and a culture of buzzwords. It didn't mention my name, but it didn't need to. Anyone who knew, knew. I read the article, a quiet sense of satisfaction settling over me. It wasn't about the revenge. It was about the elegant, undeniable triumph of logic over nonsense, of substance over style, of a well-designed system over chaotic ambition. I closed the browser and turned back to my work. On the screen was the dashboard for the VVPRS. Its status indicators were all green, all systems were stable, all protocols were active, the data was clean, the logic was sound. The system was, after all, working exactly as designed. Outro: if this story of sweet, satirical justice resonated with you, please like and subscribe. What was the most hilariously satisfying moment of her takedown? Was it the webinar interruption, or Lucas's badge getting declined at the coffee bar? Share your thoughts in the comments below. To hear the next story of professional revenge, click the video on your screen now.